So I am Alyssa Kiefer, and I'm presenting my culminating experience project, Community and Composting in Victory Acres. So Victory Acres is a low-income community located a few miles east of Arizona State University. It's circled here on the map, and the little red dot that you see is the Escalante Community Center. And this is the 101 freeway right here. It divides the community center away from the neighborhood that it's meant to service. So the 101 freeway was put in after the community was established and after the Escalante Community Center was built. So it restricted access for residents of Victory Acres to get to the community center. So that was my first sustainability problem that I realized, and then the first goal of my project. I wanted to reconnect some of the broken ties between Victory Acres and the community center. In particular, the garden that's in the back of the community center. So this garden, pictured here, has a really large composting system that has been implemented there. But it doesn't service any of the residents of the neighborhoods surrounding the area. It only takes care of the compost that's produced from the garden itself. So that was the first thing that I noticed. So like I said, the first project goal was to reconnect the neighborhood to the community center. And the second goal was to start using that composting center that's already in the neighborhood to service the residents of the neighborhood. So that would deal with the issues of food waste. And then my last major goal was to increase happiness. So how I found that those three were connected was through Scott Cloudier's and Deidre Pfeiffer's Sustainability Through Happiness framework. And it details how those three aspects are linked. Community cohesion, sustainability, and happiness. So that really solidified my idea that increasing one or more of those three aspects would improve one or more of the other aspects. However, the framework that's outlined in that paper wasn't really applicable to the project that I was doing. So I utilized Arnhem Week's sustainability solution framework instead. So it analyzes the sustainability problem or the current state. It visions a sustainability solution or a sustainable vision. And I just like to say that that vision is not the project manager's vision. That's not my vision. That's the vision of the residents of Victory Acres and of the project partners at Escalante. And then from there you can find your intervention points as to how to get from the current state to the vision state. So let me go over some of the interventions. The first thing that I did was I was part of the Sustainable Neighborhoods and Happiness course in fall of 2016. And in that course, we're in Victory Acres 1 or 2 times a week, and we're interacting with residents there. We do projects during that course to help out the residents of Victory Acres, really anything that they want us to do. So that ranges from painting their house to pruning their gardens and stuff like that. And so through that course, that's how I learned that residents of Victory Acres were interested in composting. So now we have interest in the neighborhood, but a lot of them said that they weren't able to compost. Either like they didn't want to do it by themselves, like in their backyards. None of us really have the capability for a full composting system, you know. But then also the city of Tempe offers composting programs, but all of those are paid services, and that is out of the reach for a lot of the residents in Victory Acres. So now that we have interest in composting, I was really interested in finding a local solution that might be free, that would be really accessible to the residents of Victory Acres. So that's when I first contacted Escalante Community Center Garden. And I formed a great partnership with the garden manager. He walked me through the entire process of how they compost there. I asked if the residents of Victory Acres would be able to bring their compost or somehow get their compost to the composting center and compost. And he said, yes, that would be fine. He made me a key, and then that's how my involvement in the whole project started. So through the class, these are some other things that we did just through the class. There was a gardening and composting class, so it outlined like what kind of plants you could plant in your garden that will thrive in Arizona, and then composting and how that can benefit your garden. And then we had a composting table at the community block party. And I'll talk more about the block party in a little bit, but the table there, at this point in my project, all I had was my idea, the partnership at Escalante, and some composting buckets that had been donated. So just so you know. So the first thing that I had to do was to create a poster or some sort of informational for like what is compostable and what is not. And so that's when I created this here. And all of these items that are compostable have been cross-checked with Escalante Community Center Garden. The manager there was Dave, he was super nice. And he helped me put together this list. So all of these items are compostable there through their barrels, but they're also edible items for the chickens and the turkey that live there. And then I created this compost project advertisement that you see here. So I posted that in heavily trafficked areas in the neighborhood. I posted it at Escalante Community Center and at the Catholic Church in the neighborhood. And it really just details how to contact me, how to get your bucket, how to get your poster, and how to start composting through my program. So that's when composting began, as you see down here. I started picking up compost for residents and taking it to Escalante and returning soil if they desired it for their gardens. And what's really cool about that is that every time I went to Escalante Community Center to put food waste into the chicken coop or into the barrel, there were people there. There's a lot of residents that gather at Escalante, and they're not necessarily residents of Victory Acres, but they're residents of the neighborhood surrounding. And everybody from children to adults would ask me what I was doing, or like what are these chickens doing here, and how do you feed them, and where do these eggs go? Which is cool because the eggs that the chickens produce go back to the community center into the cafe. So it's cool how everything just stays really locally there. Also through the project, I participated in the Garden Community Harvest Days, so those happen twice a month. And those are focused on pruning the garden, taking care of the garden. It has absolutely nothing to do with the composting part of the Escalante garden. And then we get to, somewhere in the middle of this semester, a lot of residents dropped the project, which I'll talk about at the end, but it's just important to note that. And then finally we get to April, and last weekend there was another community block party, and it was highly successful. Residents came out and talked to everybody. We had raffle, we had prizes, we had games, there was food, and I set up a new composting table where I had things to show people this time. So I still have my composting buckets. I brought my poster, which that's what they would receive if they signed up for the program. I had a sign-up list. I had my final deliverable right here I'll talk about. And then I had a game, so how to interact people with like the act of composting. I brought a bunch of items that are either compostable, recyclable, or trash, and I would, which bin does this go into? And then I had candy for people that got correct answers. So it was a really engaging way to have people do the act of composting, realize how easy it really can be. And so that worked out really well. So to get to the final deliverable, that's just a poster, and that can go to residents, and then there's an electronic copy that's going to Escalante as well. So it outlines how composting can continue in Victory Acres even after my project is over. So the point of the project, like I said, was to reconnect the ties from the neighborhood to the community center garden, specifically to the compost section of that and the garden itself. But once my involvement in this project is over, if those ties are broken, then my project failed. So the point is to have residents have increased access to the garden and access to the composting system. So through my partnership with Escalante, we were able to work out like volunteer hours at the garden where residents can bring compost to those volunteers. They'll compost for them, give them back soil, and they'll be able to have access to the garden during both those volunteer hours and during community harvest days now. So they can bring compost to the garden 5 days a week, where none of that was able to happen before. So some of the outcomes here. So like I just explained this middle one. So during my project timeline, 350 pounds of food waste was diverted from Phoenix area landfill. So that helps not only the sustainability issue of like taking food waste out of landfill, but also helps Phoenix reach its 40% diversion goal by 2020. So now Victory Acres has a really tangible part in helping its township reach that goal. I explained the second one, how residents now have open access to the garden 5 days a week. And then lastly, my project illuminated future research and project opportunities for future projects in areas like Victory Acres or Victory Acres itself. So first, the community block parties, they were super effective in engaging with residents, probably because they were multi-generational, they had a lot of things to offer to everybody, and you were able to bring your whole family to it. So community block parties were the best way to engage with residents about my project. They were the most effective in getting people to sign up. And the appeal, the multi-generational appeal helped get the people there, but the personal contact and the face-to-face interactions that you have during those block parties versus just handing out the poster or seeing the poster posted somewhere really helped get people involved in the composting program. So that actually touches also on this very last point, the personal trust. So like when you just see a poster and you see somebody offering to come to your house and pick up a bucket of food waste, you know, that's a really impersonal appeal. And so the poster wasn't that effective in gaining residents into the program, but the face-to-face interactions were really effective. And then some future research and community engagement techniques would be really helpful, especially in lower income communities such as Victory Acres. Specifically, future programs in time-saving services or childcare services would do very well in Victory Acres. Like I said, they're really low income. 15% of the houses in this neighborhood are single-parent households. And then of those that have two parents, 85% of those have both parents working full-time. And there is childcare offered at Escalante, but it's only from ages 6 to 17, and it's only on weekdays. So that leaves you with all of your children aged 0 to 6, and then all of your children on weekends. So any sort of program that helps take care of the kids so that adults can get work done or, you know, do projects in the neighborhood and help engage with their neighbors would be really helpful. Are there any questions?